Bom, vamos dar início à conferência do professor Gilbert Achcar, que, como vocês viram pelo programa divulgado pela ANPOCS, será sobre os processos em curso nos países árabes. Se é uma revolução ou não, nós saberemos depois da palestra. O professor Gilbert Achcar é atualmente professor na Escola de Estudos Orientais e Africanos da Universidade de Londres. Ele é um velho conhecido do Brasil, já esteve em poucas, mas em outras ocasiões, aqui anos atrás. Ele nasceu casualmente no Senegal, mas ele é efetivamente, culturalmente, de família libanesa. Foi para Paris em 1983, onde ele fez o seu doutorado. Depois foi para Berlim em 2003 e a partir de 2007 está na Universidade de Londres. O seu doutorado foi em História Social na Universidade de Paris 7. E depois foi pesquisador do Centro Merck Bloch em Berlim. Mas eu quero fazer uma sinteticíssima resumo da produção intelectual do professor Achcar. Ele publicou em 2010, estou acompanhando o currículo dele, em 2010, um livro sobre a narrativa árabe sobre o Holocausto, que teve forte repercussão em muitos países, inclusive em Israel, pelas publicações que foram feitas sobre esse trabalho em Israel. Mas também nos interessa particularmente a sua presença aqui, não só por ser um estudioso dos países árabes, mas também porque é um estudioso de relações internacionais em geral, tem trabalhos muito importantes sobre a política de armamentos que foram publicados, aqui vejo aqui no currículo, em 15 línguas, portanto no mundo inteiro. Tem livros sobre a política norte-americana de armamentos e de corrida armamentista depois do chamado fim da Guerra Fria, e inclusive e particularmente, que será um tema dessa sua exposição, certamente, as relações entre o Oriente Médio e os Estados Unidos. Tema que nos é particularmente caro. Então, acho que estão colocadas as explicações do interesse da ANPOCS pela sua vinda a essa 35ª reunião anual, justamente porque o tema dos países árabes e o tema dos acontecimentos nos países árabes e o fato de os países árabes e certos conflitos nos países árabes estarem no centro das relações internacionais contemporâneas e serem objeto de uma preocupação, eu diria, ajustando-me às componentes da ANPOCS, sendo também objeto de um forte interesse sociológico e antropológico pelas componentes culturais que há nestes processos. Portanto, vocês verão, o professor Achcar não vai pelo senso comum, que é muito utilizado na imprensa e mesmo em alguns meios acadêmicos, na análise das posições em curso nestes países, mas procura fazer uma análise mais de caráter mais estrutural, mais em profundidade das correntes que se movimentam. A palavra está com o professor Gilberto. Muito obrigado pela vinda a esta reunião.
Muito obrigado, Túlio. Thank you very much. I thank the association for inviting me and providing me this with this opportunity to have this discussion with you about the Arab world, which, as Túlio mentioned, is the region I come from. I was born in Senegal, but I grew up in Lebanon. I will start by, let's say, discussing the roots of the ongoing events, and then move to a discussion of, following this title, of their dynamics, and opening the way for a discussion. And I'm sure that there is a lot of interest in this topic because it is at the center of world news, has been at the center of world news for already several months, since at least January, and therefore I hope we'll have enough time for some discussion, and otherwise I will be around until tomorrow morning, so if anybody is interested in any specific issues, you are more than welcome. So, about the roots of that, I will start from very classical premises when it comes to the study of revolutions. I guess that in this kind of assembly, people are familiar with one of the most classical theses in the analysis of revolutions, which is the one expressed by Marx, and which is at the core of his so-called historical materialism. And it is that of the contradiction between the development of productive forces and existing production relations, the existing mode of production. This is a very basic, very elementary thesis formulated by Marx when defining the reasons for what he calls epochs of social revolution. And well, I do think that in the case we are facing, not necessarily in every case, because there are many different factors that can lead to revolutions, but Marx was speaking about an epoch of social revolution. He was speaking about not an isolated event, which then can have several different causes, but when you really have a historical watershed, and therefore something pointing to deeper roots. And I would say that what is going on in the Arab world, because of its extension, its massive character, definitely points to an epochal nature. And therefore, this is an opportunity to take a look at the events from the prism of Marx's classical thesis. I would also add from the start that, of course, the thesis was very rough. It has to be very much refined. It's not my contention in any way that what is happening now in the Arab world, for instance, is has any socialist dynamics at its core. That would be very much exaggerated or wishful thinking on the part of some people. The issue is not one of contradiction with the generic capitalist mode of production, But what we do have, definitely, is a clash between the requirement for the development of productive forces in that part of the world and the specific, not the generic capitalist mode of production, but the specific type of social structure, of class domination that exists in the region and that actually has been hampering the development of productive forces for several decades already, even when compared to other parts of what is usually called the developing world. And I will start by showing you a few slides, just a very few slides, just for the beginning, as an illustration of what we could call the stalled development, the blocked development of the region that I'm dealing with today. So I'll have to turn my back to see my own slides also, because they're not facing me here, but just very few of them. So this is the GDP per capita, and this is the average annual growth rate of the GDP per capita over several decades. So as you can see, you have the 2 decades of the 70s and the 80s up until 1990, and then the 2 decades of the 90s and the 2000s, well, until 2009. And you can see that when it comes, therefore, to the GDP per capita, for the 70s and the 80s, there was negative growth in the region. And this contrasts with the rest of the world, with the exception of sub-Saharan Africa, which also was in, and is still in terrible social economic conditions. And in the next 2 decades, the situation improved, but you can see that the Middle East and North Africa remain quite below the average for developing countries, which is dominated, of course, by Asia, and especially the South Asia and East Asia types of records. So we see already with such figures that there is a major problem. We have really a case here of stalled development. Now, one may think that since we are here dealing with GDP per capita, it is due to demographic issues. It might be the case that you have, well, a dynamic economics, but such a demographic rate that it is producing such result. Now, it is not the case. I mean, the growth rate, the population growth rate, and here again we see the same period I'm giving you in these figures here, is not, I mean, the difference in the population growth rate does not warrant for the kind of difference that we have seen, for instance, if we compare Middle East, North Africa, and South Asia, for the kind of difference that we have seen in GDP growth rates. So population, although you have high demographic rates in the Middle East and North Africa, they are not of such a difference as to provide the reason or the explanation for the problem of growth that we have seen. And this is actually confirmed if we even look at the growth rate of the GDP in general. I mean, without the per capita, without dividing it by the population. And we can see here, this is the GDP average annual growth rate for the last, I mean, for the 2000-2008. And you can see also how much Middle East and North Africa for instance, is quite below even sub-Saharan Africa, actually. Not to mention South Asia and East Asia and Pacific. And we are speaking here with a part of the world which is endowed with huge resources in capital. We are not speaking of some poor part of the world when it comes to capital resources. And well, one major aspect, if not the major aspect, of the stalled development of the region is unemployment. What is unemployment if not a lack of development of productive forces, in that case human resources, human labor power. And you can see that the Middle East and North Africa are far above the rest of the world, actually. And the region has been having record figures in unemployment for several decades. The highest rates of unemployment in the whole world are to be found, when we are speaking of regions, in the Middle East and North Africa. And when we take a closer look at this unemployment, it is very revealing again. What's coming up? Here is unemployment of youth in darker color and adults. And you see that this record of the Middle East and North Africa is even more striking when it comes to youth unemployment. The youth unemployment in the region, and according to the figures of the World Bank and the rest here, youth are 15 to 24 years old. Youth unemployment is far higher than the rest of the world. And this is a very striking figure, which explains, one of the reasons explaining this huge discontent among the youth, which expressed itself in the ongoing upheaval very clearly. Well, usually revolutionary upheavals always involve the youth, not old people. So this is a general rule, and it is very much illustrated by what happened in the region. And again, some would believe that this high youth unemployment is due to a high proportion of young people, a higher proportion of young people in the region than elsewhere. Again, this is wrong. The proportion of young people in the region is not that different, is not very different from what you get in most of the rest of the developing world. And therefore, it is not this aspect that explains the youth unemployment in the region. It's something else. It's much more structural, socioeconomic than anything else. And by the way, this is also a response to theories of the so-called youth bulge, the youth bulge. That is this explanation that you have social explosions when you have too many young people. I'm making it schematic, but basically that's what it amounts to. These theories, which were popular even in the CIA for the explanation of violence, they don't really hold water in that case, because again, explaining the upheaval in the Middle East by any youth bulge does not hold water. There is not any significant difference in the proportion of youth that would explain why you have an upheaval there and not elsewhere. Of course, another aspect of the stalled development in the region is gender. And the other very high record of the region is female unemployment. This is again a world record. As you can see, the Middle East and North Africa here are far above the rest of the world when it comes to female unemployment. Well, this is, of course, here related partly to some cultural factors, but again, the social economic structure. For instance, the resorption of the role of the state economically with the neoliberal transformation over the last decades has reduced job opportunities for women because it was usually the state sector that provides most of the jobs for women. So this is again related not only to culture, there are some cultural phenomena, but also to social economic issues. And this, I mean, the ratio of employment to population of women is actually even more dramatic than sheer unemployment, because the unemployment figures will show you the persons declaring themselves as job seekers. That's what you get in the figures. But we have to look also at the whole number of people who abandoned any, project of getting a job because they just think it's not feasible. And if we look at the ratio of employment to the population of women, the female ratio here, we see how much it is, how much lower it is in the Middle East and North Africa than anywhere else in the developing world. Okay, I will stop here for the slides. We can put that off and continue without slides. But that was to give you a graphic, visual idea of what I was mentioning. It's always better to see that than just to listen to figures. Now, this stalled development led also, of course, to high levels of poverty in the region. Although, again, on the face of it, this is a very uneven region in which you find states with some of the highest GDP per capita and states among the lowest GDP per capita. There is no other part of the world where you have such a huge gap between very rich, very poor countries. And of course, this is due to the factor of oil. Oil is creating that. But oil is supposed to be spilling over in the region. And nevertheless, we have high rates of poverty, which are not translated again here. I mean, for people in social science, we are accustomed to discuss even the criteria used in figures, the World Bank criteria of figures, the poverty rates, the $1.25 per day, and then the $2 per day kind of thresholds of criteria applied to the whole world. This does not really work. It's better to take the national poverty lines into consideration. And if we look at the upper national poverty line, the upper national poverty line means the threshold at which you can get essential food and essential non-food consumption. So below this level,